So to do this fly, I'll run through a quick overview of the materials. You need some sort of a bent hook like this. Straight hooks work okay, but I like the overall shape of the fly better on these. I do them in 8s, 6s, 4s. I guess 6 is my most common, but you just match the size of the crayfish that you're trying to imitate. You'll need at least 12 wraps of .035 lead, some orange or red 6/0 thread, or whatever you like that way. You'll need a little bit of sand or white or cream colored marabou. This is sand. For the antennae, you'll need either Uniflex or Sexy Floss or Flexi Floss. Product like that. I don't like rubber legging material because it isn't very durable. It gets pulled off as you fish it. It also degrades over time. This stuff is superior. You'll need a little bit of felt. This is what we use for the backing of the fly, the shell of the crayfish. This is simply from Walmart. They sell it in these big squares, and you can cut it to any size you like. This is a number 6 fly, and so I'm going to use about a 1/4 inch wide piece, roughly a 1/4 inch wide piece. For the eyes on the fly, I really played around with a lot of things, but these are the Easy Shrimp eyes. These things are just awesome. They look so cool on the fly. They come in lots of colors. I'm going to use red on this particular one because I think it'll look cool. They make them in black and all sorts of things. We'll use a fair amount of dubbing on the fly. I like to mix a little hairline cream with some UV pearl crystal or ice dub, and that seems to make a really nice dubbing blend for me. You'll need a couple of relatively matched mallard flank feathers or something else. I've used pheasant feathers of different kinds, body feathers, lots of things. Doesn't really matter as long as it's a decently durable feather. And then we'll also need Montana Fly Company or MFC rubber hackle. This is in Halloween. They make it in a lot of different colors. This will become the legs, and really a cool product. Really dig it. And then a little bit of just regular wire. I think that's like a medium copper wire. So let's get to tying this fly. Device. And we'll need 12 wraps of .035 lead wire. You can go smaller if you like. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But what we will do with this wire is first slide it back so that this loop, where it stops, is about even with the barb, which we can now take off. And we want to keep that lead on the back half of the hook. The reason is that it helps the fly sink parallel to the bottom rather than nose down or bend down in an unnatural way. Crayfish sink if you watch them in a horizontal, or a parallel way. That took some experimenting, as simple as the solution is for me. Anyway, then to help broaden the fly in the right way, I squeeze and flatten that lead. It'll also help to contribute to maintaining the overall gap, the hook gap, so we get more positive hook sets. And we'll start our thread. The reason for the orange or red thread, a bright colored thread, is that it bleeds through the dubbing and creates a really cool effect that I like, and I believe the fish like. One problem that this fly can have when you're tying it is that the materials will spin off of that, as that lead likes to try to spin a little bit. So once you've got a decent coating of this thread on here, I like to hit it with a little Zap-A-Gap or super glue. Doesn't take much, just a little bit to hold it in place and give that a half a second to dry. While it does that, we'll ready a marabou feather. This is in sand. I've used cream, white, orange. You can play with the colors on this fly like you can any fly. And we don't want a super long tail. We want it about, well, about half the length or 2/3 of the length of the shank of the hook. So about like that, it looks about right. Let that down, keep it out of the way. Give this guy a little spin, trim him off. And for the antennae, that's Sexy Floss or Flexi Floss. It's good stuff. Rubber legging works. It just, you know, the fish beat it up more quickly. It degrades over time as it gets old. If the fly sits in your box for a while, come back, it'll be all brittle. I think this stuff is a better material to use. Anyway, I just fold it over, and it'll sit kind of on top just like that. I give them a little pull to the sides, and there you have it. They just sit just like that. I'm not worried about the butt ends or any of that. That'll all get covered up. But our next step is to attach this felt, again from Walmart. I've trimmed it to a point, and what we're going to do is attach it so that the thick end of the point, so to speak, is about where we tie it in, like so. And as you tie it in, give it a little pull back, and that'll help it lay the way we want it to. These brighter, sort of rusty or orangish colored crayfish work really well for me when the water's off color. They seem to stand out. I did do some black ones one time, and I thought those would be the ticket in some situations, but the fish disagreed with me. Anyway, I didn't catch a thing on them. So now for the eyes. Here's the Easy Shrimp eyes, and you'll see that it's got that V shape to it. We want that V as far forward as we can get it. That way, when we fold that felt back over the fly, it will, and I'll show you that, it'll splay these eyes out like so and help them really stand out. They make these eyes in a lot of colors, as I mentioned, and I've tied with lots of them. My two favorites are this reddish color and also black. Black works real well. Black's probably the more natural. All right, once we have the eyes in there, we're gonna dub. Not very much dubbing, just enough to kind of help the claws, which we'll tie in a moment, splay out the way we want them to. And also to kind of blend this part of the fly in. These are time-consuming to tie, but I think they're worth the effort. I also feel like they're kind of fun to tie. Like I don't sit down and crank out 24 of them, but sitting down and doing one here or one there is worth the effort. On claws, I'm going to use mallard flank on this one. Sometimes I hit these with a marker to give them some coloration, but it's generally, I don't feel like it's really that necessary. And so we just get them in there. We want them, I like them a little short. I think a lot of the commercially tied crayfish patterns on the market have claws that are just really, really too big. Seems like the fish prefer ones that I've tied with smaller claws on them, within reason. And the trick on the claws is really just to get them even. Make sure the ends are even. And everything is looking good. And I think this guy's just a touch long. Okay. So we'll secure him in here. Trim off these butt ends. Had a lot of requests to do a video. It's my first fly tying video ever in my life. Hopefully it goes okay. So those claws will naturally, of course, cup in this way. And to get them to splay out the way we want to, those stems of these feathers for the claws, we'll take a natural set. We give them a little bend. And then once we're all done, we'll glue the fly. and all the material will help and hold them the way we want. They don't generally fold back in on me. They maintain that shape pretty well, which is awesome because when you're twitching it and moving it, they'll collapse and then they'll kind of go back out, and it's a cool kind of movement that happens with this pattern. All right, the next step then is to attach that Montana rubber leg material. I've cut a small section of it here, and I'm going to tie it in on the top of the fly right up here. I've cleared off some of that metal stem so we get a nice clean tie-in. And what will eventually happen is that we'll fold this over the top like so. But we're not just yet. We want to dub underneath it. I do a relatively thick dubbing noodle here. It doesn't have to be super even or anything because it's all going to get brushed out in the end. And we want to go about an overall half of the hook shank, roughly, maybe a little less than that. But when I first started tying these, I made the thoraxes too small, and once I kind of got to fishing them and seeing them in the water, I was like, man, they don't look quite as realistic as I want. This fly, I want to have a balance of realism with movement, and I think it strikes that. I believe it does. I've experimented for a long time with this, and this is the version that I've been fishing now for a while, and it hasn't changed much, so I guess I'm happy with it. Just fool with colors, mostly. Someone said, what if Montana Fly Company stops making this rubber leg material that you like so much? So I spent a bunch of money and bought like a lifetime supply of it. Hopefully they don't quit making it. It's really useful for a lot of patterns. All right, that's looking pretty good. And like I said, it's not super even. We don't care about that too much. In fact, I think I need just a touch more. I want just a little bit more on there. I usually go to about roughly where the lead ends. Maybe not quite that far. Okay. So now we'll fold the rubber legging material over, and you can see it's quite a bit longer than I need it to be. So I'm going to pull off some of the legs here as needed. Go. And trim that wire down. This wire is actually pretty stout, so a little wire clippers is really handy. That's looking about right. We'll sweep these back. Tie that guy down. Secure it real well. Also cover up that shank of that hook, so like I said, that thread color will glow out through the dubbing once it's all wet. Okay, next step here is to attach a bit of copper wire, which I just dropped. Sorry about that. We're going to use this copper wire to create the segments of the abdomen. And speaking of the abdomen, we're going to dub it. If you ever looked at a crayfish real carefully, I'm sure you've noticed that its underbody is a cream or even a white color on most species, at least the ones I'm familiar with, certainly the ones in my river here. And so this fly attempts to recreate that. So we're going to dub our abdomen, and again, I don't get too worried about keeping that dubbing noodle real even or anything, because it's all going to get brushed out. Okay, so now we will fold the back over this way, but one thing to double check is to make sure you've got about an equal number of rubber legs on either side of the fly. And if not, then we want to pull some or cut some or whatever we need to do. We don't want it to become unbalanced. And we fold that felt over like so, pinch it down, give it 3-4 good wraps to secure it in place. There we go. I can trim this. I like to leave a little tail. And that will come in and create our abdominal segments with the wire. This is a thick copper wire, or probably medium, or maybe it's even a large. I don't know. I buy it from a craft store. It's cheap. And I make these wraps real tight, and I want 4 or 5 segments back here on this abdomen. And secure it. Because I buy this stuff from a craft store, this particular brand, whatever it is, doesn't like to helicopter off very well. So I use my wire cutters, kind of cheap. So other than some trimming, that is the Parson's DTS crayfish. Let's do our last little bit of tweaking. First things first, the legs are, you can leave them real long if you like. Sometimes that added motion is cool. I like to trim them down a little bit from where they are here. I just stack them all up like so. Come through and give them a quick slice. Sometimes some of them are a little longer than others. Maybe just a touch long yet. There we go. Yeah, I like that. So that's the legs. Again, they can be shorter or longer to your preference. I'm going to give the claws another bend backwards. So we're going to be ready to glue it here pretty quick. The last little step is one I do tend to forget from time to time, and that is to come in and brush the bottom of the fly. Get it all, kind of recreate those swimmerettes that they have on the bottom of their tail. Also allows that brightly colored thread to shine through in a cool way. Because I can brush it, I can even out some of that I didn't have done before. There we go. Okay. Looking pretty good. I think I'm happy with it. Last little step, I like to texture it a little bit with a marker, just a few dots. This is more eye appeal. I like how it looks. I don't think the fish care one bit. And when I have to do a bunch of them because I have trips coming up or something like that, I don't bother. Last step, important step, and that is to glue this. Gluing it involves using a fair amount. That felt will naturally soak up a lot of water and make the fly heavier than it needs to be. It also will, that felt will shred as fish eat it. So I've found that if I just give it a pretty liberal dosing of glue and let that glue just really kind of soak into the felt, it gives it a great deal more durability. Also, as that glue soaks into that felt, it will go down and secure both the claws and the rubber legging material and keep the fly, keep the proportions and its integrity in place. And here we go. Once that dries, that'll look just like it did before we got it wet with glue. It moves well in the water. Get a little more dubbing out right there. And it has been one of my best big fish producers here in Wyoming. So I hope you enjoyed that. A lot of folks have asked about the fly. Again, happy to share it. And that's the Parson's DTS crayfish that is in Charlie Craven's latest streamer book. I was really honored to have some of my patterns in there, and this is one of them. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.